U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Canada with, quote, severe fertilizer tariffs. That had some in the industry scratching their heads because he's been reducing these levies on fertilizer imports from this country.
President Trump is threatening to impose tariffs on Canadian fertilizer while announcing billions in new aid for U.S. farmers. Trump suggested he could target fertilizer imported from Canada to boost domestic production.
U.S. farms are walking into a wall. The wall is made of one mineral, and Mark Carney just put his hand on the switch that controls it. The mineral is potash. 9 out of every 10 pounds US uses to grow food comes from Canada. Donald Trump started a tariff fight that assumed Canada would blink. Canada did not blink. Canada counted. And the numbers now sitting on Carney's desk are the reason US farmers are about to pay more for every acre they plant this spring. The majority of us citizens will never hear the word potash in their lives, but they eat it every day.
When people see the Globe and Mail, they may not know about potash, but when the Globe and Mail has a full color picture and calls it pink gold, people pay attention.
Potash is the potassium-based fertilizer that keeps corn standing, wheat filling, and soybeans growing to full weight. Take it out of the soil and yields drop by half. Leave it in, and American farms feed hundreds of millions of people. It is invisible until it disappears. And that is exactly the position Washington has walked into. The US does mine potash. There are operations in Utah, New Mexico, and Michigan, but the ore coming out of those mines is lower grade. The volumes are small. No amount of political pressure changes what the rock underneath actually contains. American geology simply does not hold what American agriculture requires. The scale of the gap is where the story sharpens. The US Geological Survey has mapped it clearly. Canadian potash reserves are close to 5 times the size of American reserves. Canadian production runs at roughly 36 times the volume of American output. The Fertilizer Institute, which represents the American industry, confirmed that Canada supplied about 85% of US potash imports in 2024. Other industry estimates push that figure closer to 90%, depending on how shipments are counted. The only other major exporters in the world are Belarus and Russia. After 2022, neither can legally or practically sell into the American market. That leaves a single supplier for nearly every American cornfield. Canada is not just the biggest supplier to America. Canada is the biggest supplier to the world. In 2023, Canadian mines produced over 32% of global potash output. Canadian exports accounted for more than 41% of the global trade in minerals. Saskatchewan alone operates 11 active mines. Those mines pulled an estimated 21.9 million metric tons out of the ground in 2023. Nutrien, the Canadian company headquartered in Saskatoon, is the largest single potash producer on the planet. In 2024, Nutrien sold more than 14.4 million tons to more than 40 countries. Canadian reserves sit at around 1.1 billion tons in potassium oxide equivalent, according to Natural Resources Canada. Then came February. In February 2025, the Trump administration announced a 25% tariff on Canadian fertilizer imports. The logic was political. The math was not. Within weeks, American farm groups were back in Washington demanding a rollback. The administration cut the rate to 10%, but the damage had a direction now. Potash at that point was trading near $450 per ton, according to Illinois production cost figures. A 25% tariff would have added over $100 per ton to the supply coming from Saskatchewan. At 10%, the number is smaller. But the shape of the problem did not go away. It just quieted down. And then it got louder. Josh Linville is the vice president of fertilizer at StoneX. He put it in one line, which the industry now often quotes. Most tariff goods work like this. The exporting country absorbs part of the cost. Potash does not work that way. Canada holds the leverage because nobody else can physically deliver the volume America needs. There is no second supplier. There is no waiting mine. There is no alternative mineral that does what potash does in high-yield farming. The tariff lands on the American buyer and stays there. Bob Thompson runs the Michigan Farmers Union. He described the pass-through in plain terms. Any added tariff cost flows directly down to the farm, and once it reaches the farmer, it stops moving. Crop prices are set by commodity markets in Chicago and Kansas City, not by the people growing the crop. Bill Cudson, an agricultural economist at Michigan State, said the effect is straightforward. Potash prices go up, farm profits go down, And this is happening at a moment when US farm income is already falling. For corn producers, 2025 is the third consecutive year of depressed prices. Fertilizer is 30 to 45% of total operating costs. There is no slack left in the budget. The data has already moved. The US import price index for chemical fertilizers stood at 164.5 in December 2024. By September 2025, it had risen to 186.5. That is a 14-month climb of more than 13% on the index. Global supply did not tighten. The weather was not the driver. There was no shipping crisis. The Fertilizer Institute has formally requested an exemption for Canadian potash, calling it critical to US agriculture. Nutrien, the Canadian exporter, issued its own warning. Any new tariff increase will raise costs for American farmers. No supply alternative exists in the short or medium term. The exporter and the importer agree on the problem. In December 2025, Trump signaled he was weighing a new round of tariff increases on Canadian fertilizer. He framed it as part of a broader strategy to rebuild American fertilizer manufacturing at home. The project most often cited is a proposed potash mine in Oyola County, Michigan. If it is built, it could eventually produce roughly 800,000 tons of potash per year. It depends on a federal loan of about $1.1 billion, which received conditional approval in January 2025. Even if the financing closes tomorrow, new potash mines take years of construction and ramp up before they produce at scale. The US agricultural calendar operates in weeks. The mine operates in decades. Joe Jansen, an agricultural economist at the University of Illinois, laid out the trap that few policymakers are talking about. If tariffs succeed in protecting domestic US potash production, that production only exists because it is shielded from the cheaper Canadian supply. When American farmers then buy that domestically produced potash, the Canadian price advantage is gone. While Washington debates, Saskatchewan builds. The Bitch-Jansen mine, one of the largest potash projects in the world, begins production in 2026.